And I guess we will kick it off now. So the first thing we do is we do introductions for people who haven't joined the call before or maybe haven't been on the call in a while, because I think a good thing about these calls is to get people together and to have conversations and to meet other people developing similar stuff. There's so many presentations on YouTube and at conferences, so for this forum to really talk amongst each other. So I would love to hear from people that are joining the call for the first time, maybe like a 10-second to 60-second intro of what brought you here or what you're working on, or any kind of introduction that seems appropriate for the call. And if you do, maybe you can type your name in the chat when you go down the line. That way we're not like, it gets weird when people try and talk over each other and don't know who's going first.
Usually the host tells who's going first, so it breaks the ice.
I know, but well, the host goes first and does the introduction. If I did that, I'd introduce myself on every single one of these calls. But my name is Emily, and I work at Level K, and we've been working on a lot of curation market apps. We've done a few TCR projects, and right now the big thing we're doing, I guess, is futarchy and prediction markets and solving or making decisions through prediction markets. And we're working to put that on Aragon. And we're working on signaling markets for big decisions, maybe APG decisions and stuff. And we were working on a TCR library a while back, which is kind of how this call got started. And that's my intro. And Alex, you can go next.
Okay, so I will go because I'm thinking like on the odd order of the windows. So I'm Alex van der Sande. I've been working with Ethereum since 2014. And my latest thing is that I'm trying to really focus on the onboarding problem, which everyone agrees is like a big one. And that's why I'm working on this thing called universal logins, which takes a bunch of things like a smart contract wallet, meta transactions, ENS, and tries to put them together in a single packet and in an SDK that other people can just use other people can use, and they can start doing their project with having solved already onboarding things. Yeah. So in my screen, I think James Young is just on the left of me.
Oh, and this is where you guys always are.
Okay. I'll go. I'm James. I've been interested in TCRs for a while, helped with the AdChain white paper, and also interested in layer 2. So I actually helped with getting SpankChain off the ground in terms of payment channels, and also interested in now user onboarding. I think the biggest lesson I learned when doing SpankChain was that, scalability, while it's solvable, is really just a subset of usability. And so scalability, onboarding, they all kind of have to go together. The more, I guess, hidden or the less effort the user has to do in terms of like getting into crypto, I think the better. So that's me. Jeff Emmett is next to me.
Yeah, sorry, just eating dinner here at the same time. I'm Jeff. I'm working with Giveth on a new product called the Common Stack. And the Common Stack is, we're also building it in conjunction with the research coming out of block science, and basically trying to build components from mathematical first principles that are designed, modeled, validated, and simulated using their CAD tool. So that's all in the works at the moment. And how it relates to TCR is one of the modules we're building in that is something we're calling conviction voting, or we're not exactly sure, conviction voting or momentum voting. And it's basically a continuous voting model, similar to what TCRs aim to do, but trying to remove some of the attack vectors related to the time-based vote and moving lots of tokens quickly from one place to another, trying to implement more flows and reduce our sort of locks and some of those mechanisms that we impose to address those attack vectors. So yeah, lots of research to come, and really interesting topic. So excited to chat with people about that if they have more questions at some point. And I guess next to me is John Kelleher.
Are we all doing intros, or is it?
I guess we're all doing intros today. So
okay.
different form. It's like throw the
I wasn't
ball
sure.
today.
Real quick, I work at Level K. I'm in Boston. I'm excited about this usability stuff that James Young is talking about, and the rest of you guys, and universal login stuff. And Austin, like, we have been using the burner wallet. I try to get my girlfriend and all her friends to use it. Some of them hate me. And if you have any advice, I'd love to connect you on what you did in Denver, because we're thinking about doing something similar maybe in Boston with ETH Boston. So anyways, nice to meet everybody.
By the way, Griff stopped in to say hello.
Hey guys. God, it's really, geez. Dude, I'm so awesome. What are you guys all doing here?
Community call, man.
Wow. So I have to go get ready for Africa Burn, but just wanted to say we're working hard.
Sounds like a rough time, buddy.
Yeah, real tough.
Kyle's here. I haven't seen Kyle in so long. Why don't you introduce yourself?
How's it going?
Hey,
Yeah.
Kyle.
I've just been in the Ethereum space for about a year now. Did some TCR stuff with Emily and Mike in Buenos Aires. Done some open source contributions to the Universal Login project. Really look forward to hearing about that during the fall. So yeah, just excited.
Thanks for joining, Kyle.
Yeah, of course.
What we usually do is, because like if everyone always introduced themselves on every call, it would just take up the entire call. So usually we have people who haven't been on the call in a while or new introduce themselves. So I won't make everyone talk because I know everyone doesn't always want to. So if you haven't introduced yourself and you're new to the call or haven't been on in a while, if you can like say me in the chat or your name.
Because it's my first time in the call, I don't know who usually is on the call or not. So that's why I just
go through everyone.
Calling other names. So, if you want someone to introduce themselves, maybe you could call them and say, "Hey, this is your first time."
I'll probably call on Austin Griffith because he's never been on the call before.
Sure, yeah. I'm Austin Griffith. Been in this space like a year and a half now. Built some games, realized it was really clunky, started messing around with trying to provide value within the ecosystem, learned a lot about meta transactions. I'm a disciple of AVSA, and I have recently been experimenting with burner wallets, but the whole goal is just driving onboarding and getting more people into the space and getting users for these really cool pieces of technology that don't have the users they deserve.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, you've definitely for a year and a half just came in, hit the ground running. And then Arthur from Foam is on.
Yeah, hi. I was here a while ago. It's nice to be on the call again. We're doing progress at Foam on our own TCR, and I've especially been focused on maybe non-economic incentives around contribution. We've done a lot of experiments around gamification and like rolling out some badge systems, and I've done stuff like treasure hunts for adding POIs and stuff like that. That might be interesting to join in a later call as well. I think it's something that maybe isn't looked at enough or I haven't seen enough, which is like bringing more classical gamification into TCR models.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's definitely a lot of incentives in game theory that could definitely be improved upon. And then since Alex, there's a lot of new people on the call from the meta transactions that I kind of reached out to. I guess like, someone else that's a regular on the call is Dan from Civil, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi guys, I'm Dan from Civil. A lot of familiar faces here. So Austin, we just talked last week. Good to see you again. We actually last call, I think we had just launched or just about to launch. We're now, I guess, about a month into it. We've had 4 challenges, 3 are going on right now. So our TCR is super, super active. There's some really, really great discourse. I'll pop some links to the challenge if any of you guys want to check it out. So yeah, good to see y'all.
And thanks, Dan. Daryl is her first timer too, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Daryl from home. Just joining for the first time today because I'm finally awake at this time. It's always like 1, 2 a.m. here. So yeah, here I am. Nice to meet you all.
Oh, thanks. I'm so sorry. There had to be one part of the world that it was the middle of the night for, unfortunately. Anyone else? I'll leave like kind of like a 5 to 10 second silence. If anyone wants to fill it with an introduction, feel free. All right, I guess everyone who wants to introduce themselves has introduced themselves. Yeah, so ideally, a lot of times it's, you know, as TCR people on here sharing our projects and our progress and asking questions and kind of helping each other out with building these things out. This time, where I feel like I'm pulling people in from like a different department, and that's the meta transactions, onboarding, universal login, side of things. And ideally this is a call when, you know, developers or anyone gets to ask the questions that they want to ask, and we also get to hear like a few overviews of how this stuff works. And I kind of invited Alex to come and do that for the call. Thank you, Alex. And I don't know if you want to take it away with a run through of what all this stuff is.
Like a short primer on meta transactions for those who don't know.
Yeah, maybe the whole process of what you've been working with the universal login and how it connects to ENS. You get an ENS name, and kind of.
Okay, so like part of what I do is I just try to help other people do projects, right? And I think anyone who helps anyone do projects in Ethereum will figure out basically the same problems that everyone is having, right? That everyone would come to us and say, oh, here's how to make a token. And they will come back to you and say, hey, yeah, you know what? I would really like if my users could pay their token transfers in the token themselves. And then you're like, yeah, I mean, and that's an actually, like, I was trying to help that with a big bank in Brazil, like the National Development Bank, and they were trying to launch a real-based token on Ethereum, and they had like the same problems everyone had. And it was, oh, I want my users to be able to pay my token in my token. I don't want them to have Ether. I would love if they have names on it. I would love if it was easier for them to create, safer for them to create accounts, but they lose their private keys, and then that's a problem. How do I solve that? They need recoverability. And every time I would go back to them and say, hey, there are solutions. Like there's this interesting team that is doing this contract wallet thing that you can do that has recovery. Oh, for the token thing, you can do a clever way with EC recover on your own contract, where you can just send a signed message for them, and then someone can move their token around. And then went back to me and say, Alex, we just deployed a token. Like we spent the last 3 months just learning how to deploy a token. We're not gonna, we can't simply now start playing around with EC recover things, which we have no idea how to work, especially trying to pinpoint them from like, there's a GitHub here and there's a GitHub there. And that's how I thought, hey, we should try to put those all together, right? And I think the most basic one is the idea on how can you do things on Ethereum without having to pay for gas, without having to pay for Ether. And the cleverest way of doing it is you have someone else pay the Ether for you. And there are some very smart ways to do it. You can try, for instance, to have you can sign a message without having tokens, and then having Ethers, and then someone just deposits the Ether in your account. But my favorite method is the following, where you have a contract which is able to understand signed messages. So what you do, you have a private key, and you don't keep any funds on that private key. You just use that private key as a thing you use to sign message. And then if that key has tokens, for instance, you can sign a message with the key, and then you send someone that message, and that person will then be able to post that message on the blockchain and will be able to do things. And those things could be move this token from A to B, and because it's a smart transaction, you can even add an extra thing where like move my tokens from A to B, and then also pay a small amount to the person who deployed my account as a way for them to pay back the gas that they spent, right? And that's what is called meta transaction. And I'm not even sure who came up with the name meta transaction. Maybe it was Austin, or maybe it was Peter Pan. But
I think it was before both of us. I don't think either of us came up with it. I think it was someone at Uport, maybe.
Okay, well, it's a clever name, and I think that is what, and that is the main thing behind what is a meta transaction, and what is like, and how you can, and it's just, I mean, you can use it for in a tons of different ways.
The one part I didn't understand about that particular description is that you say that they have a key, but they don't keep any funds on that key, but they use that key to sign transactions. How are you, like, does that key give you the ability to move tokens from like a separate contract, or what is the purpose of that?
Yes, so there are many ways of doing that, right? So you can have a key that never stores any funds, but that key is used mostly as the authorization token for other ways, right? The simplest way of doing that would be, for instance, you could have a contract wallet in which you store your funds, and that wallet has no private key, is a contract, and it has multiple keys that have abilities to move things on it, right? So let's say you have a contract wallet and your funds in the contract wallet, and then you have your phone has a key, your iPad has a secondary key, and like, so you don't have, in your phone, you just have a key, and you can use that key to sign messages. But if you lose your phone, you're not losing any Ether, because there's no Ether, there's no tokens on the key on your phone. All that you have on your phone is a key that is able to sign messages that is accepted by a smart contract wallet. And that smart contract wallet has recovery methods in which, if you lose your phone, there are other ways to create new keys for your new phone or for your new computer. So in this model, you never back up, you never take your private key out of a phone, which I would argue is a better model than keeping like tons of backups in multiple places of your keys, which has the opposite problem, in which if one of them leaks, you lose it all. What you do is you keep each key in one specific place, right? So the phone key is kept always as safe as possible on the phone. If you want to have a paper wallet, then you make maybe you make a burner wallet specifically for that paper wallet, and you put it on a drawer until you need to use it. If you have like a key on your MacBook, that key is just kept on the MacBook, and when to add the new key, you can burn the other keys or just add the new key in a new device. And that adds a little bit of overhead, because now you need to pay to add keys, you need to pay to remove keys. But in my opinion, it's worth the trouble for a safer smart contract wallet, especially because since that smart contract wallet represents now all your devices, now you can be interacting with your Ethereum apps as if you were doing from a single identity, which can even have a ENS name. You don't need to create a new account if you have a new device, have a new iPad, you don't need to create a new wallet and transfer funds to it to do the new thing. You can just add a new key on that device, and that allows you to use your main account.
Yeah,
I think you're. Oh, go ahead.
You go, Austin.
I think a really cool thing to talk about here is the fact that it's incredibly easy to generate an Ethereum account. Like you can generate thousands of Ethereum accounts per second. So knowing that that is the simple piece, and it's, you know, technology from 1983, right? Like the cryptography behind an Ethereum account is 20 years old or something, right? So it's incredibly easy to generate an account, and with that account you can sign things, and with those signed things they can go on chain and they can be recovered within a contract to prove that you signed them. So all of that is super easy. So then we just have to have these relayers that are paying the gas on the side.
Guys, do you mind if I ask a small question? So if I got a traditional contract which heavily relies on a message.sender, and I want to make it compatible with meta transaction, what's your best practice? How should I amend it with any kind of a proxy, or do you have any other advice?
I can answer that. So if you're doing this method with, there are many ways of doing that, right? If you're doing this with a smart contract wallet, which I think it's the best way, you don't have to do anything, because all the message sender of your app will always be the contract account, right? Because mostly if Austin is the relayer, so if I am the signer, Austin is the relayer, what it's doing is I'm sending a signed message to Austin. Austin is posting it on the blockchain. He's sending that message to my wallet, and then my wallet is interacting with a third-party contract, right? For the purposes of that third-party contract, the message sender was my wallet, was not Austin. There are other ways in which you can use meta transactions. You can use it with the approved with like the approved feature of a token, for instance. But then in that case, it might be trickier to have like the message sender be always the same.
That's a really good point, that the message.sender, if your contracts are already deployed and they rely on message.sender, you're going to have to use this kind of bouncer proxy or contract wallet idea, because that's going to be the message.sender. What we found is when you make a call to a bouncer proxy that then makes the call to the contract, so the message.sender is the bouncer proxy, you have to do this extra step within your UI where you see that someone has made a transaction and the message.sender is this contract wallet or this bouncer proxy. Sometimes you have to go to that contract and find out who made the original, like who was the signer. So it's actually a lot harder when your contracts are already deployed and you're hoping to use message.sender. But if you get to redeploy your contracts, instead of having them use message.sender all the time, you can have them use like a signer and do an EC recover. So you're way more flexible when you can redeploy your contracts. But if you have to talk to legacy contracts, you do have to have a contract kind of in the middle that acts as this recoverer and your identity.
I could maybe misunderstanding something, but wouldn't you want the message.sender to be your universal contract? And then the signer should be almost arbitrary, because that is essentially a burner, or that might not be the same one that you're signing with, you know, a second.
Unless you don't want that identity contract in the middle, right? Let's say I had a burner wallet that has a special form of DAI on it that respects signed messages. I don't have to have any ETH. I can just sign messages left and right, and those signed messages will go all the way to the token contract and move tokens around based on, I mean, the relayer pays the gas there. But if the token contract itself doesn't use message.sender, it uses the signer, then it allows your users to just move tokens around by just sending signed messages. So there are reasons why you wouldn't want to use message sender.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. So you have this contract that's essentially serving on behalf of many different users, as opposed to deploying your own wallet for each user, I guess. That makes sense.
I've got a question. So the relayers have to get compensated in, I assume, like some token or ether. If I'm creating a new dApp, and let's say the native token is something that no one has used before, do I have to like convince the relayer network to accept this token as payment? Like, and I guess the more general question is like, how do you bootstrap a new dApp in one of these systems?
So it's an interesting question on like the how you pay back the relayer. And the first, before you even get into the problem on how the answer would be yes, you need your relayers to trust your token. But before even that, you need your relayers to trust your code. Because when I say, look, I have a smart contract wallet that whenever it pays, whenever you send a signed message to it, it's gonna pay back like I can promise you that I'm gonna pay back all your gas in DAI. That doesn't mean that I'm actually gonna pay back unless you audit my code. So ideally what's gonna happen is that there is gonna be some sort of level of trust between the relayer and the contract wallet, which doesn't need to be fully trust. It could be just the relayers will only work with like a few types of bytecodes, or they will work with only a few factories, right? They will look, has this contract been created by a factory I trust? Does this contract have a bytecode I trust? And in that sense, if you want to create a new factory with new features and with like a new bytecode that other relayers do not trust, then I would suggest for you to also run your own relayers, because then that's how you connect to your users, right? You like it's not that complicated for a dApp themselves to have their own relayers. In fact, they probably should for the sake of their users.
That's exactly right. Like you start, like everyone who starts building meta transactions start with their own simple centralized relayer, and it's just a machine that sits there and it accepts HTTP requests that are messages, and it puts those messages on chain. It's not the best model, but that's the simplest way to start.
Do you guys think that someday there will be like a larger relayer network that you could tap into and like a standard for this stuff, so it's like easier for new dApps to come in? Because it sounds like right now I'd have to like sort of build my own relayer that's specific to my dApp, which is fine, and then you start with a centralized relayer and try to grow from there.
100 gas stations network, which you can like write in the rules of how you want like meta transactions to work right within the smart contract itself, which is cool. And then I believe that one's like agnostic to the relayer, but I might be wrong.
Yeah, we actually have that in production in the burner wallet. If I send you a link and you don't have any gas to pay to pull that link out of escrow, you can sign a meta transaction and ship it to basically a decentralized relayer network. I think it's called the GSN, Gas Station Network, from Yoav Weiss and the guys at Tabuki. So I run a relayer within that network, and they all run relayers too. But what you do is you need, instead of hitting a centralized box, you go to a registry and pick out one of the relayers, and then you send your transaction to it, and then it returns you a signed Ethereum transaction. And so I as an app developer have stake funds, and the relayers as good actors within a system have to stake funds, and then they can be slashed if they don't act correctly. But this isn't on mainnet yet, I don't think.
Right, it's not on mainnet, but there's one on test network, and I have played around with it, and you can basically in your smart contract yourself create like a whitelist if you wanted to, or other rules that could function similarly, but it would all have to be written in the smart contract.
And in in that infrastructure, then the relayer doesn't really need to trust you. It's more on the other end, like they send you back the signed message, and then you have to trust the relayer in that situation. Trust.
I don't think there's any trust required, because if it fails one relayer, then the next another relayer will just be chosen from the GSN.
Yeah, since it's an HTTP request, so the way we went about this at first is we thought we would have this decentralized set of relayers that were reading from a transaction pool, and somehow there would be some game theory there that would incentivize them to perform correctly, and you could just ship your transaction out to this pool and someone would pick it up and take care of it. And we kind of banged on that for a while, like months, and it just wasn't, it was so heady and so complex and such an issue that like we couldn't find a good solution. And then that's when these guys came along with more of a relayer returns pattern, where instead of you sending your transaction to a pool, you pick one from a pool and you just send an HTTP request to him, and he immediately returns you a signed Ethereum transaction, or he doesn't, and you pick another one, and you can get that done and signed and off before the next block is mined, because it's relatively a lot faster than going to the chain.
And when you pick one of those relayers, do you need to prove that you paid them something, or actually pay them something in order for them to do this?
It happens atomically within the transaction. So when you've signed within your thing that relayer is going to get a piece on top of the gas that you pay for, sort of through the money that the dApp developer has staked. So as Burner Wallet, I stake money to pay for my users to get links. And so the relayer will get some of my stake each time he runs one of those transactions through.
Yeah, sort of how at least I was interacting with it, how I sort of understood it is you basically pay the gas station's network a certain number of ether that basically the contract that you want to have meta transactions on it, like that you want to pay for your users, and then you write the rules of like who can actually access those meta transactions into the smart contract itself. So like I was saying earlier, you could have a whitelist. So if you just had a very, very simple whitelist, and then it would just pay for every transaction of those people in the whitelist on that smart contract until it ran out of gas for that smart contract.
So as a dApp developer, I would need to pay something upfront to this relayer network in Ether for then my dApp to then be able to use that network with their native token.
I think that's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you stake as a dApp developer.
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
Hey,
it all happens so fast.
Depends on the type of relayer network, right? I think this is one model. Nothing prevents a dApp from creating their own model of relayer networks, right?
All right, so there's a few models. Like I was thinking, okay, if I'm starting a new dApp and I have my new token, like what are some prerequisites I need to get something like meta transactions up and running? And one thing is I pay up front and then maybe get reimbursed through my native token. Or you need a token that is just pretty liquid so that relayers will want to accept your token. That's kind of like another avenue to go down, right? And when I talked about DevCon, Alex, we were talking about using universal login, and I think we were talking with Dan if Civil was in the context, and we said, oh, they had already done an ICO, or they were doing an ICO maybe at the time. Is there, can you transition over into a universal login type architecture after doing a crowd sale? And I remember you answered that wasn't necessarily possible. Is that correct? That was always a question lingering in my head. Like there had to be some sort of like type of token distribution upfront or some prerequisites to then having this in your app.
Wait, so
it was a long time ago.
Couldn't do a universal login if you had an ICO done? I don't remember that conversation.
Okay. Well, maybe I misunderstood, and it was a long time ago, so I could just be like.
Because I mean, of course, like what do you want? What do you want for a universal login thing to work? Is you actually want your users to have your token, and then you could build something, and the idea is you want your users to build like use your tokens to use your dApp, and I think in that sense. Universal logins works like having a universal having not even a universal login, just having a smart contract wallet or any type of meta transaction works very well for someone who has done an ICO, because then you have your users, they have your token, they don't have Ether, you don't want them to have Ether, you want them to use your token to do whatever is the thing that you promised them you would have a utility for. And then you can have an actual utility for your token because you can pay transactions back. And I think that's I don't remember exactly the context we had before, but that's that's where I can see both words matching in a sense.
I think one of the like challenges presented with like universal logins is a lot of apps have like a centralized backend, and they like present a challenge to say like, hey, sign this message, and then we're going to use that to like authenticate you. And if you have like a universal login, that contract can't sign anything, right? So you need to have like your essentially the burner piece of it doing the signing. So it becomes a bit of a challenge to have that single identity able to log in to those things that are using centralized, logins, I guess, that use that way to authenticate.
It in a sense is a weird. It's a weird irony in a sense, because what I'm saying is that we should have accounts to move from having actual transactions, but just sign stuff and send them around. And then I'm also saying that a smart wallet would replace accounts because you can do all your transactions from those accounts. But the irony is that like contract wallets cannot actually sign stuff. So you're doing all your signing in accounts. And then, so if you actually need your accounts to sign something in order to do something else, like you need to have some way of being able to forward, like that identity should be able to point and say, look, I cannot sign stuff, but you should trust things that are signed by these accounts, right? So there's this irony where like this new identity cannot actually do to sign itself, right?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that you could like embed in, so your contract is just like this forwarding function in an array of keys. And I think you can make those super, super rich in terms of like permissions, if assuming the contract can understand it. But as well as other apps could then understand that, hey, here's this identity contract, there's all these keys associated with it. What does this key mean? Or what are they, like, could we make a standard where they understand what that key means and is allowed to do?
Exactly.
And guys, do you think that the contracts should support both ways of authentication of users, like with signature recovery and simple way of just message sender from, for example, universal login is a good pattern just to be versatile on a smart contract design? I don't know, to make it feel like kind of a polymorphism on the smart contract side, so I can accept both message sender and the signature.
Oh, I think actually there is an interesting pattern there in which you should, like, you should have multiple ways in which you're doing the same thing, right? So for instance, if you're just doing a token, right, what you should have, like, if you're doing a token right now at this moment, you already have to do a pattern in which there are multiple ways in which you can transfer a token from A to B, right? Because you can have a token to be transferred from me to Austin by me signing a message. But another thing I can do is like I could also sign a message saying Emily has the authorization of, like, I can do an approve method where Emily has the right to move my tokens to Austin, right? So if you're putting a token right now, you should probably abstract the moving, like the action from the authorization, right? The action is move tokens A from B from A to B. And there's authorization in which who authorized this? So function number one, like the person is signing the message, so they are authorized, so therefore move. Function number two, they are using the approve method. So if they have an approval, then you can move. Then you're just adding a bunch of other authorizations, like, oh, are they using a EC recover thing? Are they using A, B, or C, right? In the sense, I think it's good for you to, as a contract developer, to abstract away the action itself from the authorization of the action itself, in my opinion.
This is kind of a tangent, but something I've just been thinking about, because you made me think of it when you were talking about the approve. I wish, like you have to send an approve function, and then someone would call like transfer from. I wish there was like a transfer from with an approval that you could just like include a signature on the transfer from. So then you could just have the user sign a message as opposed to submit an approve function and then send the transfer from with that. That would save a whole bunch of transactions, and I wish that existed. It'd be hard to like do like replay protection maybe with that signature, but I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, it just shows how it's actually easier if you can separate like who approves it from how you do the thing, right? I think I agree. Like since we made the ERC token standard, we've realized how many other ways you want to do that, and that's why, for instance, most contracts actually just use the approve method.
I have another question, more general question. Is there somewhere we could look for like an example of this pattern? Like what app does this pattern really well? And also you guys have like resources that you could share with the group, like links to the SDK on GitHub or just anything that can help us get started. Sorry if I cut out.
Well, there are multiple places. I'm gonna like I am gonna, of course, like point to universallogins.io because it's the thing I built. And we have like both for GitHub, there's an example page, and there's even something I built on the If Paris hackathon. What I built was an actual hackathon, like a hackathon for a boilerplate for hackathons, in which you have like a very single one-page app that does all the create identity things, and then you can sort of play around with it. I'm gonna post the link on the chat.
Nice, thanks.
And Austin said the burner wallet right now has like kind of a centralized network of relayers, I believe, right?
No, so the burner wallet is on XDAI running the GSN, so it does use a decentralized set of relayers. You wanna try it out? What kind of phone do you have? Do you have an iPhone?
I have an Android.
Okay. So someone out there with an iPhone, so I can use the QR code reader of it. So I'm gonna roll up a link. Someone that doesn't have a burner wallet yet, if you scan this with your camera on your iPhone, it is actually a meta transaction that will go to anybody out there with an iPhone? I can't see anybody pulling one out.
I have a question.
Okay.
I'm not gonna do it because I already have it. But
okay.
What happens if you already have a burner wallet with money on it? Does it get replaced?
Yeah,
then it try to scan a code.
This is just a claim code. So this is just money rolled up in an escrow contract. So if you claim it and you have funds already, it will just use your funds to claim it, and it'll pull it in. So it's not like a private key where it's a new account or anything like that. It's just claiming funds. So if you have money already, you'll just pay the gas to claim the funds. The problem is if you don't have money and you need to claim funds out of an escrow contract, you need to go talk to that contract without having the gas to do so. And that's where the gas station network comes in. You send this to the gas station network. So it's picking one of those out of that list, and then it does the transaction for you, pays the gas, and you get your funds out of the escrow. It's actually gas.
I was getting amazed by the burner wallet of how they're always like these little clever tricks, or a lot more clever than I would expect. I thought it was just like you are just scanning a private key and replacing it, but it's a lot more smart than that, of course.
So that's what the private keys are, like these paper wallets that we do. Like I did this emoji coin.exchange game where I dropped these paper wallets on a class of 50 students. So inside the paper wallet is a private key and then like some directions on how to play the game. But I dropped 50 of these on a classroom, and immediately like 40 out of the 50 kids were playing, and they're trading shit coins. They were like these emojis that they could buy in and out.
That's awesome.
And you could just like tap, 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 and it would make multiple transactions and increment the nonce. You were talking to a smart contract, but they didn't know that. They were just hitting buttons. So we had like 1,000 transactions per hour for like 24 hours while they played the game. And then the winners ended up winning some actual cash, which was cool.
I think if you could like bring the block time down to like 3 seconds, it completely changes the way that you like interact with the dApp and just the way it feels. I think it's completely different.
Yeah, it's like when you send a transaction on Ethereum, there's still like that goosebumps moment when like all of that just went through. But when you send a transaction in 3 seconds, it's different. It's more, it feels more real. Like that's where the burner wallet kind of, I just built it as like a quick little web wallet, and we were just playing around with it at DevCon. And then seeing people's faces while they used it was kind of my signal that I needed to work on it more.
Yeah, so we did a similar thing at a conference, and this is like Radical Exchange, and we used the burner wallet with a skin on top. And then this is first time crypto users, never used blockchain, and they were almost like not impressed because they didn't really realize that it was like blockchain and like what was happening. It was so wild.
Yeah, hopefully on main chain too with Ethereum, maybe with Plasma. I don't know if anyone's working on layer 2 stuff, but hopefully that will speed up the experience as well.
I shielded some of my meta transaction work too in the chat.
Nice, thanks. Were those like high school kids or like college kids?
College kids.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
College computer science kids. And they were able to figure out, they got into my React app and figured out how to talk to the contracts. And you can see it in the graph. I show transactions per minute, and there's a moment where one guy figures out how to like automate it, and it just like skyrockets. Like he ends up doing like half the transactions of the whole thing. Like I think we ended up like 16,000 or 18,000 transactions, and he was half of them.
Wow, how long were they using this for? That's a lot of transactions.
Let me just get the article. It's worth dropping it into chat. It was just 24 hours before they. So what happens is I put $300 in the contract to incentivize them, and each one of these had just $5 of tokens in it. So if they wanted to, they could off ramp the tokens immediately, or they could stick around and play the game and try to earn more. And 2 people pulled out 100, and then 50, 20, 6, 5, 4.
That's awesome. This went by quick. The hour's like wrapping up. I don't know if anyone who hasn't spoken yet, or if there's anyone that has like a question that's been lingering that they want to ask. Usually I hold like an awkward silence for any like last questions that anyone can chime in with.
I have one more question. Another general one. What do you guys see as like big challenges for meta transactions and universal login right now? Like what things still need to be solved? And like, is there anything that you'd recommend for teams to like tackle and build that isn't already built yet?
So I would start with universal logins, and then maybe Austin can close with saying like his experience in Burner and like whoever else wants to say. So I would start by saying like just in general, funding those open source projects isn't that easy as it is. Like we've been funding universal logins through more open source grants, and it's interesting because sometimes it's quick and easy, and you talk to like 2 people and they give you like 50K and you can start building. Sometimes you go with like weeks and weeks and weeks, and then they say, oh, your project is awesome and we really want to help in any way we can accept money, right? So that's always an interesting challenge. And the other challenge is that I would say that this is trying to solve usability, and I play with people saying usability is as important or more than scalability, but then sometimes it's those really correlate, because the main problem with universal logins is the idea that in order to onboard, like you cannot do the magic that the burner wallet thing does, because in order to onboard users, you need to spend money, because you need to create a contract, you need to deploy a contract, you need to put a bunch of keys somewhere, and you need to like register the ENS name, which is the perfect thing. So what I'm thinking in my mind is that ideally what we want to try to build, the scenario we want to do is a temporary one in which your users start with a burner wallet where they scan and play around, maybe in a sidechain, maybe in an XDAI style model, maybe in like in one of those like side chains, which is with 5 second probation time. And the minute that they have, let's say $1 or $5 on their thing, then you push them, hey, you should probably take it out from a burner wallet and create a username and create a recovery key and create a secondary device. And then you convince them, hey, you should probably like pay 50 cents or $1 in order to do that. And then it comes the usability thing, the scalability thing, because if you're asking for them for paying 5 cents or $5 in order to make that initial contract, those are very different numbers, right? So like that changes completely the usability. So it is important to try to solve it in the cheapest way possible. Austin, what's your experience on the burners experience, and like what are the limits and what are the challenges right now?
Yeah, I think for me, I try to evangelize just people using and respecting signed messages within their contract. Like, if you have the chance to redeploy your contract, if you're working on your contracts right now, start looking at EC Recover and start looking at signed message recovery, because you'll want to have that in your contract going forward. And everything else, I think, will happen kind of around it a lot quicker, and we can iterate. But once that contract is deployed, it's out there, right? So I would highly recommend just getting functions within your contract to do all the same things you do, like transfer and approve, but do those things with signed messages also. I think, yeah, I think if you also want like a very, very good getting started guide, would be like, deploy a contract that takes in the EC Recover and then like fires an event with who the signer was, right? And then in your code, sign a message and send it to your contract. And once you have that link, everything else just will fall together.
Thanks, that's really awesome advice. Yeah, we're gonna keep that in mind for sure. Sweet, it's like almost the hour. That went by so quick. Thank you, all you meta transaction gurus, for coming on and just like shedding some light on us people that are trying to like keep up and develop dApps on top of this stuff. And thanks everyone for all your questions. I do record this and it will go on YouTube. I don't know if anyone else has anything else to say. Other than thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys. This is great.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So much fun talking to you. It's good to meet the people I haven't met before. Thank you so much, Alex, for agreeing to come on and talk about universal login. And I'll tweet it out. You can watch yourself talk if you want. I hate doing
Thanks, everybody.
that.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, goodbye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.
See you guys.
Thanks.